welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first time. We are so happy to have you here. Today's video is going to be my February wrap-up and my March TBR. I'm so excited to share this with you guys because I read 18 books this month and they were all pretty good. I don't think I had any truly low-rated books this month. I think 3.5 was the lowest, and yeah, so I'd call that a pretty successful month. So because I have 18 books, let's jump right into it. There will be a picture right here or right here, however I put it, of the Goodreads photo of the book so you can see a copy of what book I'm talking about because I put them away as I read them. But anyway, right into it. Book number 1 was Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. It's the first book in the Addicted Calloway Sisters series. I rated this a 4-star. I love Lily and Lo. I can see why they're so many people's favorite couple. Absolutely love it. The reason it got 4 instead of 5 is because it's an adult romance, so there's quite a bit of smut, which, as I've talked about before, I do kind of try to skim over that. But it's more necessary to the story in this book because it speaks highly about addiction. There's drug and alcohol addiction. There's also a sex addiction talked about in this book. So trigger warning for anybody who doesn't want to read about those things. It's an adult book for sure. But I thought it was heartbreaking and interesting and informational with regards to addiction, and it was just a really, really good book. So I'm really excited to get into the series. I also really love some of the side characters. So some of the Calloway sisters, who I presume will be in the other books. So yeah, really enjoyed the start of that series. Number 2 was The Vanishing Stare by Maureen Johnson. That's the second book in the Truly Devious series. I gave this one a 4-star as well. Really good. Just cute, fun, fast-paced mystery, dark academia, all the good things. Excited to move on to the next book in that series for sure. Number 3 was Ignite Me, which is the third book in the Shatter Me series by Tahereh Mafi. If you know me, you know I'm madly in love with this series. That has not changed. 5-star read. This is a dystopian, YA dystopian book. Very reminiscent of 1984, a lot of the themes. And yeah, the pace has just taken off on a trot and it never slows down. So I cannot wait to keep moving on. But at the same time, I'm sad to come to the end of this series. So number 4 was Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. Started a lot of series apparently. I loved the Six of Crows duology, so I was excited to hop into this one and was not disappointed. 4.5 stars. YA fantasy, which is kind of my jam right now. Love the characters, love the story, love the Grishaverse. Excited to read the rest of the books in that. So yeah. Number 5 was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. It's the first book in the Folk of the Air trilogy. And I gave that one a 5-star as well. Again, YA fantasy. It has more to do with the Fae and fairyland, and there are some human characters that have crossed over. And I've heard a lot of people talk about how this is the book that got them into YA fantasy, and I can 100% understand why that might be. So again, excited to move along in this series. Number 6 was Shady Hollow by Juno Black. I gave this one a 4.5 stars. Super cute. The premise of these books is that all of the characters are animals. Like the police are bears, the reporter is a fox. All of the characters are animals, but it's a cozy mystery. So, I mean, right up my alley. It was so cute. I just loved it. There's 2 more in the series. Can't wait to read those. Number 7 was Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I have heard that these are very divisive books. Some people really love them and some people really hate them. I loved Magnolia Parks. I was told by quite a few people that if you like Chuck and Blair on Gossip Girl, you're going to love Magnolia Parks. 100% true. 100% Chuck and Blair vibes. I gave this a 4-star. Looking back, I probably would up that to like 4.5. Super good. Quite a bit of language and a little bit of smut. Not terrible, but I like to put that out there, just fair warning if you're going to read it. It's an adult book for sure. Number 8 was Heir of Fire, which is the number 3 book in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. 5-star. Love this series. Love everything about it. It continues to be amazing. Watching Selena's character develop and just watching the story change. It kind of took a major story change from the end of the last book to this one. And yeah, I love where it's going. So again, another really good YA fantasy series. Number 9 was Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. And this was number 2 in the Alex Stern series, which is her adult fantasy series. The first one was Ninth House. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It's very dark, which I actually did enjoy. And it's a continuation of a story from Ninth House, so kind of the Skull and Bones, the other side of the veil kind of world, demons and ghosts and all that stuff. And I enjoyed it, but it took too long to get to the point in this book for me. It was almost too similar to Ninth House for a good chunk of the book. There was also a little bit of the main storyline that was kind of gave me the icks. So this is probably a personal preference thing, but this one got 3.5 stars for me. So yeah, win some, lose some, right? Still not a bad rating. The 10th book I read was Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. I decided I needed to read some sort of romantic comedy books or love story books during the month of February. This was 5-star, guys. Love in Other Words, 5 stars. So good. It was such a sweet story, a fun story, a heartbreaking story, all of that rolled in one. It is an adult romance, so there are some smut scenes, but it was pretty minimal. You could see them coming. You could skip past them very easily, and it wouldn't harm the story at all. I just loved it. I don't really want to tell you anything because I don't want to spoil it, but it was just, aside from those scenes with a little bit of smut, it was basically a Hallmark movie. And it was great. The number 11 book that I read was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Same exact review, basically. I gave this one a 4-star instead of a 5-star simply because the characters I didn't love quite as much as in Love in Other Words. But yeah, just very rom-com-y, Hallmark movie-esque. Yeah, really enjoyed those books. So I'm looking forward to reading more rom-coms and more slightly lighthearted romance books coming up for sure. Really enjoyed those. Number 12, I finally started ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I read the first book. It's by Sarah J. Maas. It's a fantasy book. I think it started out as YA, but maybe isn't anymore. I can't remember the story behind that. And it's also basically kind of a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, apparently, which I do get now that I've read it. I gave that one a 4.5 stars. I'm really loving the fantasy books, like I said. I loved Feyre, the character whose point of view this book was about. I love the world. I felt like, I explained it to Jason as I felt like this kind of took little bits from all of the different fantasy worlds that I've been reading from and put them all in one book. That's kind of how it felt for me. So I'm really excited to see where this series goes to. I really enjoyed it. It was very fast paced. I loved it. Number 13 was Restore Me, also part of the Shatter Me series by Tahira Mafi. 5-star. Everything I said about the last book applies. Love it. The 14th book was Ricochet by Krista and Becca Ritchie, which is number 2 in the Addicted Calloway Sisters series. It's a little bit shorter book. I gave this one a 4-star, only because, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a reason that I gave it only 4-star instead of 5, and it was, I think it was because the story was told from this perspective and this perspective instead of the two perspectives together. That's probably confusing if you haven't read it, but if you've read it, you probably know what I'm talking about. But more story development, more character development. It was just really good. I just can tell you for sure that I'm going to really enjoy the rest of this series. Number 15 was City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare, which is the number 2 book in the Mortal Instrument series. 5-star. These YA fantasy books, the Shadowhunter books, the Grishaverse. I'm just absolutely engrossed in these worlds and loving them. The Shadowhunter books are some of my favorite. I'm glad that I have a ton of them to read still. So 5-star. Number 16 was This Woven Kingdom by Tahira Mafi. It's separate from the Shatter Me series. It's her next series of books. It's also a fantasy book. I believe it's also YA. I gave this 4.5 stars. Really good, very interesting story, almost kind of like Arabian Prince vibes. Yeah, just very, very interesting. I can't say too much without being a spoiler, but a lot of mystical, magical elements and royalty and like peasants versus the royalty and things like that. And yeah, just really, it really gripped me. It really got me in right away. Plus the book is beautiful. I said this like a million times during my reading vlogs, but the book is beautiful. So there's a second one out in this series, but it's only in hardcover right now. So I'm dying to get my hands on that once that's in paperback. And the final book, nope, this is not the final book. Book number 17 was The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black. I gave this one a 4-star. It's heavy on the vampires, which is not usually my thing, although apparently it's becoming my thing. It was very good. There was a chunk in the middle of the book that was kind of like, what? It took a turn. It's like it was kind of an interesting story, and then it became like a weird classic vampire story, and then it went back to the, I don't really know how to explain it without spoiling, but yeah, there was a little chunk which knocked it down a star, but it's still a solid 4-star read. A very interesting take on what would happen if vampires were real. So I thought that was good. And now the 18th book that I read was Crave, the #1 book in the Crave series by Tracy Wolff. More vampires. And werewolves and demons and all of those things. It takes place at Catmere Academy, so it's dark academia. I heard somebody call it a cross between Twilight and Harry Potter, and that seems about right. I've never read the Twilight books, but from what I know about those and Harry Potter, that seems pretty close. It's a YA series. There were some cute things, there were some funny things, there were some dark, scary things. It was really a good book. The only thing I will say is it's almost 600 pages, and the first probably 200 to 250 pages could have been condensed to about 100 pages. It was information that you could have given us in a much shorter period of time. So that would be my only complaint. But I did give this a 4-star because I enjoyed it. Again, ready to move on to the rest of that series. So those are the 18 books that I read this month. I did DNF 2 books this month. The first one was called Almost There by Farah Roshan. It's a retelling of The Princess and the Frog, only like a dark retelling and a change of the story. And I think I talked about this in a previous reading vlog, but I like The Princess and the Frog. I don't need it told a different way. So I guess the best way I can describe it is I felt like I was, like somebody was telling me the story, but they were telling it wrong. So it was not for me. There are a ton of these books out on the Disney stories. It might be something you would enjoy. It was absolutely not for me. And the other one that I DNF'd was Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. As much as I love the Magnolia Parks book, I hated Daisy Hates. Her family is kind of, they're like crime bosses and almost mob-esque a little bit. And it was a completely different turn. No Chuck and Blair in this one. A completely different turn. And it just was a little bit too dark and a little bit too, I don't know if edgy is the word. It gave me the icks a little bit. It was not my thing. So I will not be reading the second Daisy Hates book. I will be reading the second Magnolia Parks book. So yeah, those were my 2 DNFs for the month. But a month with 2 DNFs is not great, but not the end of the world. So those were my February reads. Really, really good reading month. So now to jump into the March TBR, I'm doing things a little bit differently for March. I drew some prompts for my last couple of months, and I had some other ways of figuring out previous TBRs, but this month I kind of just want to read as the mood strikes and pick whatever I want. So the 2 books that I'm starting with this month, because I'm really never reading one book at a time, let's face it, but I decided to start reading The Hobbit. I have the Lord of the Rings collection, if you can see it behind me right here, that Jason bought me for Christmas, and I've never read The Hobbit. Actually, I've never read any of them. I've seen the 3 Lord of the Rings movies, but never read any of the books, so we're gonna give this one a go. I'm already a little ways through it. I started it yesterday. And then I'm starting a nonfiction book. I really want to try to read more nonfiction this year. So I'm starting, it's called Live Your Truth and Other Lies, Exposing Popular Deceptions That Make Us Anxious, Exhausted, and Self-Obsessed by Elisa Childers. And so far it's really good. It's basically the anti-self-help book, kind of, from a biblical perspective. Just taking some of those phrases like, you will always be enough, and you can, be whatever you want to be, and you do you, and those kind of phrases, and kind of parsing out where those phrases are right in a sense, but also where they're wrong, especially for those of us who live according to biblical principles. So I think it's going to be kind of interesting. We'll see. I read her other book called Another Gospel, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, those are the two that I'm starting with, but I did not want to leave my TBR shelf here sad and lonely and empty. So I have the next book in every series that I'm currently reading on this shelf, and it was the happiest accident that it turned out looking the way it did. Let me give you a close-up view. So here you can see all beautiful and green, and then blue, and then those white and red books that look so nice together. It just looks so pretty, in my humble opinion. So yeah, that is my TBR shelf right now. I've got Crush from the Crave series, Addicted for Now from the Addicted Calloway Sister series, The Hawthorne Legacy, which is from the Inheritance Games series, Empire of Storms from Throne of Glass, Find Me from the Shadow Me series, Siege and Storm from Shadow and Bone, Cold Clay, which is next one in the Shady Hollow series, The Hand on the Wall, which is next in the Truly Devious series, A Court of Mist and Fury, next ACOTAR book, City of Glass, which is number 3 in Mortal Instruments, The Wicked King, which is next in The Folk of the Air. Yeah, so I will pull from this shelf as well, most likely during the course of the month, but I don't have to. So I think probably for the next 2 months, I'm going to do my TBR this way, at least the next 2 months, while I come up with some refreshed prompts for my bucket and all of that kind of stuff, because it's just kind of been, I don't know, it's felt almost like a little bit too much pressure to have this set list of TBR. So instead, I've set a goal for myself, 18 books last month, and that included a 24-hour readathon, which I am also planning on doing again this month. So I'm gonna set a goal for myself of a minimum of 15 books this month. My sort of out there goal is 20, but we'll see. I don't have a lot going on in March. I have a few like doctor's appointment things and stuff, but not a lot of really time-consuming things until later in the month. So I think I'll have a lot of reading time. We'll see. So my goal is 15. My sort of out there goal is 20. We'll see if I can do it. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed hearing about all of the books that I read in February. I hope maybe this gave you some ideas for books to read. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments, or send me an email if you'd like. I always have my email address, happilyoldfashioned@gmail.com, listed in the description box below. I would love to hear from you. If you have any good book recommendations, or just want to chat about one of my reviews, or tell me why you think I'm wrong, or yeah, anything, any book talk, would love to do it. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.